Today we're looking at the Specter wallet, a badass Bitcoin desktop wallet that runs on your own node, supports multisig, along with a variety of air-gapped hardware wallet options and more. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. I've been looking forward to digging into Specter Wallet. I think it's a terrific project, fully open source, incredible contributors. And so the plan for today, I'm going to go through start to finish, how to download and set up everything, how to connect Specter to your own node. I'll talk about a couple different options there. And then we're going to create a multi-sig wallet using, in this particular case, my Ledger Nano S, as well as my cold card. But there's all sorts of other configurations as we will discuss, so you won't want to miss a thing. For those returning to the channel, allow me to say welcome back, my friends and brethren. It is, as always, a pleasure to have you. And for those new to the channel, and I know there are many of you, about 80% of you watching this very moment, in fact, are not currently subscribed. And so if you like this content, I invite you to consider subscribing and join us in our merry gang in cyberspace. I cover all manner of Bitcoin-related content, including wallet tutorials such as this, running your own node, Bitcoin mining, DeFi on Bitcoin, Lightning Network, news and analysis. You want it, I cover it. That is the name of the game. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in first. And I just want to briefly highlight some of the particulars that make Specter Wallet unique. So the very first thing to note is Specter is designed to operate on your own node, which I think is a unique proposition that sort of immediately places it in a little bit more of the kind of advanced bucket. But I really like that because it encourages folks to think about running their own node. I've done a whole video on the reasons why you might want to do this. And I've also done other videos on manually setting up a Raspberry Pi node from scratch, as well as kind of, more plug and play options. And so by default, Specter, once you download it, is going to be looking for a local instance of a Bitcoin Core node. And so, you could do that, right? You could download Bitcoin Core and run a full node on your computer, right? I mean, this is free. Like, you don't have to pay anything for that. Keep in mind that the limitation there might be your hard drive in terms of the amount of space that you have on your computer. The Bitcoin blockchain at this point between 350 and 400 gigs and growing. And so you're going to want to keep that in mind if you want to run a full Bitcoin Core node. I will likely do a video on that in the future. But you alternatively may have any number of other node implementations. MyNode, Umbrel are very popular. I'm going to be showing you today what that looks like with Umbrel. And again, I've done a whole video on Umbrel as well, so check that out. I will link everything that I'm referencing as we go along here in the description down below. But that's one big piece about Specter. The other piece is that it doesn't totally sacrifice UI, right? Even though it brings a lot of power to your kind of Bitcoin security and privacy fight, if you will. And so it has, I think, one of the better interfaces for creating and managing multi-sig wallets, which we are going to focus on as part of today. Multi-sig or multi-signature is simply a wallet that requires more than one key to enable the spending of funds from that wallet. And so this exponentially increases security when you consider how difficult it is to even get one hash collision with a sort of Bitcoin private key. And I've done a whole video on that as well, as you will find. And then it supports a whole range, I think all the major hardware wallets, air-gapped, non-air-gapped, and more. And so it's a really, really powerful, packed tool, runs on your own node. And as we now jump in and see what it looks like and where we should download it from, I also want to call attention to another really cool thing, which is their do-it-yourself hardware. I will link this, of course, in the description down below, and you'll see the kind of rundown. What I wanted to briefly touch on before we start downloading everything and getting set up is this kind of do-it-yourself kind of hardware. So this is really interesting. If you continue scrolling down from here, you can see that they actually list out on GitHub a kind of do-it-yourself open source hardware implementation. It includes a touch screen, a QR code scanner, really, really cool stuff. And what this is it allows you to assemble from off-the-shelf components your own hardware wallet device, which is very, very cool. And so if you head over to GitHub, you'll see all the kind of logic. Now, I will say this would be, I haven't done this myself, this would certainly be a project, but it is really, really cool for those of you who want to take a stab at this. I may do a video on this in the future, but you can see here's the README file, so Specter DIY, and it kind of goes through the, the caveats, the callouts, the overview, and then you have all this great stuff to start with. So for example, the shopping page kind of goes through what's required, how to get it, etc., etc. So I did want to mention that just because I think it's pretty unique and novel. But without further ado, let's now jump in and actually start setting this thing up. All right, so let's come over to the downloads and we'll go to the Specter desktop option. And so for us, we are running Windows, so we will do this. What's really nice is they have a very, very clear kind of rundown of how to verify signatures. If you've never done this before, the simple idea is that you ideally want to verify that the files you're downloading are what the developers have intended and have sort of put on the internet for you to grab. This is to ensure that if for some reason, maybe Specter.solutions has been taken by an attacker and they've put malicious software up, they wouldn't be able to kind of get away with it if you had a cryptographic way to verify whether that sort of installer that you've downloaded is actually the right one or not. That's the idea at a high level. And so let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is first download the executable. So this is the actual kind of program. And there it goes. I'm also going to download this hash file. And finally, the signature file. All right, so next it says download and import the PGP public key of Kim. So I'm going to, I'll do save link as, and let's just go ahead and save it. It says for older releases, there's a alternatives, that's fine. Download and install GPG for Win. So I've actually done this already, but it gives you a link for where you can do this. And so when you do that, you can download a program called Cleopatra. And Cleopatra basically allows you to create your own public-private key pair that you can use to sign messages and encrypt and decrypt files. And so let's go ahead and jump into that. And so here we go. So as you can see, I've got a couple different ones in here already. What we want to do first is import the key we just downloaded. And so let's go to downloads. And here's our PGP keys. Go ahead and hit open. And it says in order to mark the certificate as valid, it needs to be certified. Certified means you are you check the fingerprint, and so it's suggesting a couple different ways. Typically, you would confirm this through a website, and so sure, we can say yes. And here's the fingerprint. And indeed, we can just check and see after clicking on that on Keybase, we can see that the fingerprint, so you see where it says fingerprint equals, that is indeed equal to what we have here. So we'll go ahead and certify that. Okay, so we've imported the keys from Kim that we're going to use to verify what we have. So I'll come back over to our instructions. So we're on number 6. So now we'll go ahead and decrypt and verify, and we'll choose the file we had downloaded earlier. And so we want this one, I believe. And there we go. So we've got a valid signature from Kim's key. So that is good. So we'll go ahead and close this out. That is good. All right, so next it says right click on the Windows button and choose PowerShell. So we'll want to open up a PowerShell terminal. There we go. And so first it's saying CD download. So this is just pointing us to the downloads directory where we have the file. And so now I'll just copy this command and we will run this. All right, so there we go. We've got a hash now of the file. And so what we finally want to do is come back over to our downloads and open up the and here we go. So I've opened the sort of other SHA-256 file in Notepad. And so now what I'm going to do is just compare the hash for the download that I've done. And so the one that I have downloaded is third from the bottom here. And so I'm just sort of scanning to make sure that this guy is the same as this guy. And as you can see, it is. So great. So we are fully verified. Now that probably felt like a lot if that's the very first time you've done this, but it is a good habit to get into. It is certainly a best practice to verify anything you're downloading from the internet. And I don't think this is too bad once you have GPG4 Win and Cleopatra set up. Again, this is in the case of Windows here. It'll look slightly different if you're using a different operating system. But there we go. So we can click out of this and we can come back and open up Specter. Thanks but no thanks, Windows. You can run anyway. So we've got the little Pac-Man here, which is pretty cool. All right, so here we've got welcome to Specter Desktop. Specter Desktop is a convenient wallet interface to better use your Bitcoin Core node. So right off the bat, it's designed to operate off your own node. It doesn't have to be a Bitcoin Core node. Although if you did want to go that route, all you would do is come over to bitcoin.org and you can download Bitcoin Core right to your computer. Now, I'm not going to do that in this particular case. And as you will see, it says wallets are unavailable if Specter is not connected to Bitcoin Core. So we want to configure our node. And so what we now want to do is come over to Umbrel. And so I will log into my Umbrel node. And what we want to do is come over to Connect Wallet. And we'll go ahead and select Specter Desktop. And it will present us with a handy list of instructions. Now, what's really cool is that there's actually a Specter Desktop app directly in Umbrel. So in theory, if you're running an Umbrel node, you don't even have to do any of this. But I wanted to do it this way just to show folks, perhaps who aren't using an Umbrel node. But what you would do is go to the App Store, and as you can see, you've got Specter Desktop Wallet as an app built directly into Umbrel, which is very cool. But let's come back. And so what we want to do is the following. Make sure Tor is up and running on your system. Click here for instructions. So I've actually done this. So what this does is it just pulls up this menu. You select the operating system you're using, and then it'll give you the page from which to download. It says to download the Windows Expert Bundle. And so I have done this and downloaded the signature and done all of that. And so I should be good on this first step. And basically, once you've verified the download, you can unzip the file and follow the rest of the instructions to have Tor up and running on the system. So then we've already gone to configure node on Specter Wallet. And so now we're just gonna follow the rest of these instructions. And so I'm gonna do this and be right back. All right, so we've passed the test and we have now clicked save. And so I am now ready to roll. You can see I now have the ability to create, add devices and create wallets. So let's now go through creating a couple devices. So keep in mind the goal of today's video mainly is to create a multi-sig wallet. And so to do that, we need a few components. So for each of those components, we're going to add a device. You don't necessarily have to be creating a multi-sig. Like if you just want to connect your cold card to this, for example, you can still add that as a device, as we will discuss. And then once you have the different devices, you can then create the actual sort of wallet interface within Specter. So let's go ahead and hit add new device. And as you can see, they've got kind of this wizard, which makes it nice. And so let's get these set up. I'm going to first select the ledger option. And we can name this ledger 1. And it says connect your hardware device to the computer via USB. And so the ledger, of course, is not an air-gapped hardware wallet, meaning it cannot convey information back and forth in a way that does not require plugging it into a computer. And so, of course, you could use an alternative to this, as we will go through with the cold card. But I am now plugging my ledger in. All right, so I've plugged my ledger in and I've entered into the Bitcoin app on my ledger after putting in my PIN. And we'll go ahead and hit the button get via USB. What these are showing is that there's different extended pub keys for different purposes. So you can import, for example, only single sig keys, or the keys that would also enable you to form a multi-sig wallet with it. And so again, that's just what it's laying out in the middle here. But let's go ahead and hit get via USB. And so it's detecting. All right, so it's extracted the different keys associated with each of these sort of derivation paths. So we are now good. Let's go ahead and hit continue. And there we go. So the new device was added successfully. Now, if we wanted to just go ahead and create a single key wallet, we could do so. And so I'll show just what that looks like briefly. We can name this, Ledger Test Wallet. And we'll leave the SegWit default for the most efficient encoding of addresses. If it was an existing device, you could scan for existing funds. In my case, I'm using a sort of new ledger, and so there's not going to be one. And it has plucked the appropriate extended pub key from all the different things we imported. And so we could go ahead and hit create wallet. All right, so the new wallet was created successfully. That did take a little bit of time. And so we have a few options. We can save the backup as a PDF. We can always grab it later, so we'll go ahead and hit continue. But here you go, and you'll see a pretty basic, clean menu at the top. You can generate, receive addresses. You can get new addresses. You can display the address on a device. This is always a useful step to ensure that what Specter is telling you is what aligns with your wallet as well. So if I were to say display advice on the device, or display the address on the device rather, and it's detected what I have plugged in. All right, and so it's got the expected address up here, and I am looking at my Ledger device and verifying that it is exactly the same, and indeed it is. So that is good. So I've approved that. Always a good test just to make sure. But from here, you can rename addresses for better sort of coin control, coin management. And then once you've received some funds, let's say that I was to use this We'll do this fully in the multi-sig setup, but it looks essentially the same, so I'm just going to do it then. You would then have your transaction come up in the transactions tab. And of course there aren't any now, but here is where you would be able to see your balance, the history of transactions, as well as the different UTXOs or unspent transaction outputs, so that you can have good coin control and management. And the send option is largely as you would expect as well. If you had some funds, you would just put in the address or scan. So your computer's camera would be able to scan a QR code. If you have it, for example, on your phone, you could attach a label if you'd like, specify the amount, and in the advanced menu, you can customize your fees and also add multiple recipients, which is nice. And then from here, you would say create unsigned transaction. And on the following screen, it would give you the ability to sign it with your connected ledger. I'm going to show all of that, but I'm going to show it when we get to the multi-sig setup. I just wanted to really quickly go through the single sig just so you can see what it looks like. So let's come back and carry on with what we were doing. So we've got our ledger, but now we need to add our additional device type. And so we're going to do the cold card. But first, let's quickly get things set so we can do this efficiently. All right, so I've got my cold card and I've got it connected to the battery here. Again, I've done a whole video on the cold card that I will link in the description down below. If you're using this and you're brand new, check that out first. But what we want to do is get our micro SD card into the cold card. So I've got the little guy here, and we'll insert it into the side like so. Basically, what we're doing, because the cold card is air gapped, meaning it will never connect to an inner, well, you could, but in this case, I'm not using it that way. We need to convey the information to Specter. And so what we're going to do is export the extended public key that would enable us to use this device as part of a multi-sig that we create on Specter. And so now that I've got the micro SD card in, I'll come down. Now, in the case of the cold card, if you wanted to create just a single sig wallet on Specter that is for your cold card, what you would do is actually go to the advanced option here, and then you would go to micro SD card, and then you would go to export wallet. And lastly, you would create you would choose the Electrum wallet option. And what this would do is it would create an export on your micro SD card that you would then insert into your computer and read in as the single sig extended public key associated with your cold card. So in this case, we don't actually want that because we want to create the multi-sig. And so if we go back out, again, I just want to show you that in case that is what you want to do, we'll go all the way back. And so from the kind of home page, if you will, the cold card, we want to actually come down to settings. And within settings, you'll scroll down and see multi-sig wallets. And so here we want to export the XPub. So the extended public key is what is going to allow Specter to sort of ingest this, if you will, as a kind of read-only wallet. So we're doing nothing with the private keys, but we're conveying information to Specter that will allow it to know that this device is what we want to include in the multi-sig. So we'll go ahead and hit export XPub. It says this file creates a small file, this feature creates a small file containing the extended public keys. And so that's all great. And so it says multi-sig XPub file written, and it gives me the name CCXP7B6, etc., etc. So that's great. So I can now take the micro SD out of my cold card, and I will get it into my computer and be right back. All right, so I've got my micro SD in my computer. This is, I need to do a bit of a cleanup here, but this is the file that we want. It's a little bit unusual because it'll actually date this a while back to when when I was, I guess, first setting up the device. But in any case, let's come back to Specter. And so now we'll select cold card, and we'll name it cold card 1. And as you can see, it says connect your cold card to the computer via USB. So you can do that. I'm choosing hard mode here just to show what that looks like. Or upload a wallet export file from micro SD card. And you can kind of see what I was referring to earlier, where if you wanted to get the single sig extended public key, you would go to advanced micro SD card export wallet. This actually says generic JSON, so I guess follow this these instructions as opposed to what I was saying with the Electrum wallet earlier. I do think either one would work. And then to get the multi-sig extended public key, we followed those steps. So let's go ahead and upload from the SD card, and we'll find it down here. And we want this guy. And as you can see, it is correctly plucked the fact that this is, multi-sig, it's not a single sig XPub. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And it says new device was added successfully. So as you can see on the side, I've got both devices now set up and ready to go. And so we could click out of this and hit add new wallet, and then hit the multi-sig option, although it presents us with it right here. So why don't we go ahead and click create multi-sig wallet. And so Specter has correctly pulled in the devices for which I have the multi-sig extended public key. You could certainly add other devices. So you could add a third and create more complex configurations of what's called your multi-sig quorum. So a quorum is K of n, meaning any K of n total keys is required for providing a valid signature that would allow you to spend funds out of this multi-sig. And so because I've only got 2, it's of course going to be a 2 of 2 multi-sig. But if I were to add a third device, I could make it, for example, a 2 of 3 multi-sig, meaning any 2 signatures of the 3 would be required to spend funds from the multi-sig. So let's go ahead and click our 2 devices, and we'll hit continue. And we can name our wallet multi-sig test. We'll leave it as the default for SegWit, and we want 2 of 2. All right, so we've got 2 of 2, and it presents us with the keys that are going to be used for the 2 signers. So I've got the cold card as well as the ledger. So let's go ahead and hit create wallet. All right, so we've got our multi-sig wallet created. As you can see on the left, 2 of 2 multi-sig, and we are presented with the same main options that we saw earlier for the single sig. All right, now there is a final setup step to this before we can start actually using it, and that is to ensure that both of our component devices are aware of the fact that there's this multi-sig that's been created. Now, for the ledger, that's already done because it was directly connected to Specter, but the cold card doesn't yet know that. All the cold card knows is that it has passed its extended public key to wherever. And so what we want to do is go to export, and we can go ahead and save the file. And so I've got this saved as multi-sig test. I can come down to my, let me make sure I don't have a file already named that. I do, so let's make it multi-sig test 2. And so let's, and it gives you the little instructions of how to import the wallet to the cold card to ensure that it knows that this multi-sig has been created. So let's go ahead now, and what I'm going to do is grab the SD card from my computer and get it back into my cold card, and we'll be right back. All right, so I am back with my cold card, and so we've got the micro SD in the cold card, and I'm going to come down to the same settings option we were at earlier. I'll hit check, and we will scroll down to multi-sig wallets. So go ahead and hit check. And as you can see at the top, it says none set up yet. And so that's what we're doing here. We're basically telling the cold card of this multi-sig that has been created with it as a participant in the quorum. And so we want to hit import from the SD card. And so I'll go ahead and click that option. And it says pick multi-sig wallet file to import. It says there are 2 files to pick from. Real quick note, I noticed actually first time I did this, it didn't work. And for some reason, the export from Specter was generated on my micro SD as just an ambiguous file. And so I found that I had to actually manually add the .txt file extension to make it a text file so that the cold card would be able to read it in. I don't know why that is, but if you run into that, that is hopefully what's going on. So I'll say okay, and there we go. I see the multisig test 2 where I had that I had just generated. So let's go ahead and click, and it says create new multisig wallet, 2 of 2. And this all looks great. Okay, so there we go. We've got our multi-sig wallet. Now let's head back to Specter and show how to receive and send funds. So let's go ahead and get some funds to the wallet. So I'm gonna use a wallet on my phone called Moon Wallet, and I'm going to send some funds. So it enables me to scan this QR code, or alternatively, of course, you could copy the address here, clicked over to the transactions tab, and as we can see, it is pending. And so we'll wait for a confirmation so that we can take a look at what it looks like to be sent. But you can also come over to the UTXO tab and see the specific amount, transaction ID that it's attached to, and all that good stuff. So let's wait for a confirmation and we'll be right back. All right, so we've got some confirmations here. So now let's go over and show how to send funds from our multisig. So I have scanned in an address from another one of my wallets on my phone. And so we can label this if we want. I'm going to leave it blank. And we'll go ahead and specify the amount. We'll go ahead and send the max. And then since we want to send everything, we'll subtract fees from the amount. And we are in no rush at all. I don't think the mempool is anyways particularly busy. And so we'll leave this at very slow. So that's that for this. Now is where things get interesting, because we will go ahead and hit create unsigned transaction. And now, because of course this is a multi-sig, we need to apply both signatures in order to spend our funds. All right, so as you can see, we're recapping all the details. We're sending this to this, and we've acquired 0 of 2 signatures. So that is now the mission. And it says sign transaction with the following. So let's go in reverse order here. Let's first sign with the ledger. And so I'll click the ledger and we'll sign via USB. And indeed, there it is. So we'll click it. All right, and so it says confirm on your ledger, and I'm looking at the ledger. It says unverified inputs. I will go ahead and hit continue, and it gives me the ability to review the details. So I can see the exact amount, which aligns accordingly, and I'm checking to ensure that the right address is displaying, and indeed it is. So I will go ahead and hit accept and send. So again, I know I'm doing this off camera. If you've never used a Ledger Nano S, I've got a whole video on it that I will link in the description down below. But it's exactly like that. All right, excellent. So as you can see, we've acquired one of two signatures. So now we want to get our cold card signature. Now again, as it's air gapped, we will need to click this option and we are going to sign with an SD card file. And so we want to hit save transaction to file, because what this is now doing is it's exporting a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. So we will then put it on our micro SD card, get the micro SD card back into our cold card, and we'll come right back once we've done that. But let me just show you the full kind of walkthrough. So save transaction to file, and I've got this kind of big long string here. And so I'll go ahead and hit save. And again, I will get the micro SD back into my cold card and be right back. All right, we're in the home stretch. So I've got the micro SD back in the cold card. And so I can now say ready to sign. And it says choose partially signed Bitcoin file to be signed. There are 4 files to pick from. Fine. And so I want this gigantic one all the way at the bottom. It's reading it in, and it will play back all the details. And so I'm glancing at the Specter wallet as well as we look at this to make sure the address is exactly right, the amount is right, the network fee is right, and it all looks good. So press OK to approve and sign the transaction. And so now it has returned to the micro SD a signed Bitcoin transaction file. And so you can see it is basically named, there's one dash part. And so I'll go ahead and hit OK. And so now we'll get this back into the computer and I'll be right back. All right, so now instead of save transaction to file, I can load a signed transaction from file. And so this should be it. Let me just make sure. No, that's actually not it. Here it is with the dash part. All right, and we've got transaction is ready to broadcast. So we've applied both signatures. And so we now have a few options. We can save it as pending if we want, but we'll go ahead and send the transaction. And there we go. So we've got the outbound transaction that's now been sent to the mempool to get picked up by miners. And so we've now looked at sending and receiving within a multi-sig setup. We took a look at the single sig setup, which again looks structurally the same. It's just, of course, you would only need the one signature for single sig. And so let's go ahead now and wrap this video up. All right, my friends, there you have it. We covered a lot of ground in this tutorial because Specter Wallet is truly a beast, but I think in a good way. It doesn't fully sacrifice UI, and it brings a lot of tools to your arsenal to become a sovereign individual and user of Bitcoin. We talked about the overall setup process, connecting it to your own node. We walked through the kind of integration with different devices. In this case, we looked at the Ledger Nano S and Cold Card, but you could use, as you saw, a variety of others that I may cover in future videos. We looked at how to create a multi-sig wallet from that and how to send and receive funds from that wallet. And so I hope you found this useful and valuable. I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts, your questions, and potentially ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. I really do take that into account when creating the schedule for the channel. In fact, this video around multi-sig is in direct response to some of what you've said. But I hope you found this valuable and useful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this video here. As always, my friends, every sack counts, especially if it's protected in a multi-sig wallet. And until next time, I'll see you then.